Peace, 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 everyone. So thank you so much for viewing this. And today I just want to it's a little bit of sharing, documenting something that I've come to realize. So the whole topic of this will be about dashes. So it's an astrological topic. And for those who know about dashes, then yeah, we're about to talk about my dashes. And for those who don't know about dashes, and by the end of this you're like, you know what, I would like to know what this is for me and my birth chart, then there is a link over here. This is probably where you will click on that, and if you book that reading there, then it will encompass a lot more plus your dashes. So what are dashes? What is a dasha? So dasha is actually a Sanskrit word, but I don't speak Sanskrit, so if I get this wrong, my bad, my fault. But from what I know and what I have secondarily studied is that dashas represents a period of time or a period of life. And when we're looking at the dashas, I'm looking at there's many dashas, as I've come to find out, but I'm specifically looking at it from the planetary period, using the planets to show us a particular time. And so I'm using something, I'm using the Vimshotri Dasha, hope I pronounced that right. And this is that is a standard 120 in terms of a lifespan. Okay, so 120 in terms of a lifespan, 120 years. So and so we're using certain energy points and certain planets. So when we're talking about dashas, we are not looking at Western astrology. This is something of Jyotish, Indian astrology. So we're looking at Ketu, which Ketu in the Western world is the south node, but please, they have different attributes when you call them out of those different names. So Ketu gives us a 7-year. Remember, we're talking about dashes, and we're talking about using the planetary energies to give us a time period. And so these are the time periods for each planetary energy. So Ketu has a 7-year period. Venus has a 20-year period. The Sun has a 6-year period. The Moon has a 10-year period. Mars has a 7-year period. The North Node has an 18-year period. Jupiter has a 16-year period. Saturn has a 19-year period. And then Mercury has a 17-year period. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 energies that we're looking at when we talk about the Vimshotri dashes. Okay, so that's just a little basics for you guys. And so we're going to look at it from my perspective, because I want to document this for myself, because at the end of the day, until that time comes, that's when I'll really be able to recognize its full potential. But I am just speculating based on the chart analysis I have done for myself. And so far, when I'm talking about this, it will make more sense. But anyway, let's just go into it. So I'm not looking at my whole time period, and I'm not going to explain to you guys how it's calculated. If you want to know that, there's so many astrologers who give this out on YouTube. You can follow them, just write this in, and there'll be like loads of lectures that you guys can really go deeply into. Or like I said, if you want someone to help you interpret it, your chart, then I'm there for you. Okay, you can book a session. So I'm looking at the Ketu time period, okay, because that's the one I'm in right now and the one I'm soon to finish. So I start, like I said, Ketu time period is a 7-year period, okay, Ketu. And so Ketu for me began, the time period began in 2014, okay. I was 21 years old, and it is going to finish in this year. It's going to finish this year, in soon, okay, one of these months. And I obviously know the exact date, but it's not going to do you any justice for me to give you the exact date. But I think the year is a good rough period to understand what I want to talk about. So what I did is I was like, oh wow, these themes of Ketu definitely came up. I revised what those themes are. Now Ketu represents spirituality, represents philosophy, represents medicine, medicine, it represents worship. And those are the themes of Ketu. And since I turned 21, those are the things that, like, my life just it was like someone turned on the light and those themes just came up. It was really interesting. It was just so mad interesting. Anyway, you guys, I like talking about, I talked about the annual perfections in another video on my YouTube. You can check that out. That's a Western type of way of breaking down longer time periods, but this is a different type of way of breaking it down, and I'm telling you things, they're just aligned, and that's the first, like, that's what the spark of astrology will always keep you going, because it's like, wow. But anyway, so the things that Ketu represented came up. And so then I was like, okay, where is Ketu actually placed for me in my natal chart? And for me, Ketu is placed in the 8th place, or the 8th house, and the sign that rules over that is Gemini. If you didn't understand any of that, that is absolutely fine. I will explain to my best what that represents. So Ketu, this point, this energy that represents a 7-year time period, is placed somewhere. Okay, in an environment, in a place, and it was placed in an environment that represents regeneration, that represents support from others, and this support is spiritual support, moral support, financial support. It represents death. It represents legacy, deep research. It represents joint assets with the partner, joint money with other people you're in partnership with. And so that is the place that Ketu was in for me. And so Ketu, with all its philosophy and worship and medicine and spirituality, was in this space of support from others, death, legacies, deep research, right? And then the sign that ruled over it, Gemini represents, in its sense, really represents change. It represents receiving and carrying information. It represents duality. It represents astrology. It represents yoga, two things that come to one. And with astrology, you are receiving a message, and you are, carrying it on. You read the symbol and then you pass on the message, so that, that comes under that energy of Gemini. And so when I hit 21, there's so many, all my days, when I hit 21, these things came up. All the way till now, I'm still doing these things. Am I not doing deep research on things of spirituality, philosophy, medicine? So funny. I have joint assets with my partner. Yes, we're not married yet, but before we even decided to get married, we created a joint partnership. But apart from that, I'm in partnership with Deep Science, what I do with the calendars, with another sister called Camilla. So we're in joint partnership, joint finances that way. I experienced death. So I experienced death in a Gemini way, in the sense of relatives, because one of my relatives that I knew, that he was in the family before I was even born. That one's there. He is responsible for the reasons why my cousins are here, because he's the father, them levels. So he passed away, but then he passed away recently, but in 2017 my mom passed away, and that death definitely transformed me, right? So those themes of Ketu came up. I definitely got a lot of support from others. I got a lot of physical support from others, a lot of financial support from others. I got a lot of moral support from others. Like, I borrowed a lot of people's faith. And it's really interesting because the rule of Gemini, for all of us who finds us astrology, is Mercury. So where Mercury was placed in my chart also brought those themes alive, right? And so Mercury for me is placed in relationships. So a lot of my relationships since I was 21 were relationships that transformed me. So as I got into relationships, people were spiritually inclined, so that brought my morality up and brought those Ketu concepts back up. So it's just really interesting. I was more spiritual with the public because the seventh house is also the public. I started doing things one-to-one, spiritual consultations, astrology, yoga. It's deep, yeah. 7 years I've been doing some 8th house Ketu stuff, like really flowing myself into the deepest parts of what the deepest concepts of life is what I've really been into. And I've been adaptable, and I've literally been everything that my chart has promised, and I really appreciate that. It really like gives me life, man. I love it. So anyway, so this year at some point, yeah, it's not happened yet, but it's coming up very soon. My 7-year ends, and then I go into the longest of them all. Remember, Venus has the longest time period of them all. Who has the shortest? The Sun. The Sun has the shortest, and then the South Node and Mars have the shortest after that. And then, yeah, so basically, Venus is the longest, and then just right after Venus, it would have been Saturn, because Saturn has a 19-year time period. Venus has a 20-year time period, and that's the max. The minimum time period is 6, and that's represented by the Sun, okay? So some of us, just to put this as well, some of us like are born, like some of us could have been born in a Venus time period, and whatever Venus is promised in your chart, and also what Venus promises by nature, has come to pass. Some of us were born with a Saturn time period, and if, you know, Saturnian energies came up. Some of us were born in a Ketu time period. I wasn't born in a Ketu time period. I came to meet the Ketu time period when I was 21 years old. And now I finish it at 28. Yeah, because I started it I didn't start it exactly May when I turned 21. It was like in October, and then, do you know what I mean? So it's in between that year, but just overall. But anyway, so I'm moving into a Venus time period, and Venus, whatever Venus promises as an energy will come to. And Venus is known as a lesser benefic, or a benefic, and a benefic is something that gives joy, gives, just like the word says, benefits. So Venus represents love, gifts, it represents alliances, relationships, it represents the social affairs, it represents the feminine affairs, it represents resources, money, it represents marriage, luxury items, luxury things. So yeah, you know, pleasures, the wife. So entering the Venus time period, it's a 20-year, okay? So by the time I finish this, I'll be in my 40s, okay? So I'm not going to be like, just to let you know, in that 20 time period, you can break it down even more into a couple of years, and you can break that couple of years into a couple of months into a couple of weeks, a couple of weeks into a couple of days, a couple of days into a couple of hours, very down to the second, if you really want to be very measured into it. But I'm pretty excited just to know that naturally, this is why it's important for everyone to study their birth chart. I know what Venus is for me in my birth chart. I already know how Venus sits, the condition Venus is doing in my birth chart. So everything that Venus represents should be promised, because I'm just letting you go. No, Venus works very well in my birth chart. First of all, I'm a sun by Taurus, so Venus rules my sun. And then on top of that, Venus is in a great relationship with Mars and the moon. Venus is in a good relationship with the house of money and the house of career. It sits in a great house of health. Venus is seen very well by the sign that it sits in. So there's a lot of reception with Venus in my chart. And plus, I was born at night. So Venus works very well for those people born at night. So I move into this 20-year cycle some days coming up very soon. Okay, remember this, Salome. And what I am speculating, you know, for Venus, because of my chart, the way I am Venus is in a very pioneering sign. It's in a leadership sign. It also rules my house of relationships. It also rules my the houses of abroad and charities. You know, it's like I said, it's in a good relationship with planets in the money house for me and the planets in the career house, because I have planets in both those spaces and they're both in a good relationship, in a trine we call it. So I have a grand trine in my chart, a fire grand trine, and so this is gonna come up because Venus is in that trine. And so already what's set up, what have I planted already, because also what I am doing in life as well will play out in that condition of how Venus will also play out. So you have to look at everything. So I already work in finances, so yeah, you can see that with my Venus. But how do I work in finances? Well, I'm an investor, first of all. I invest my money. You can ask anyone right now when I'm talking. Go through my page. I'm all about money. People run away from me because money is a sensitive thing, and I'm all about money. So if you're not comfortable with that subject, you're not gonna want to be around me. Second of all, I'm learning a skill. Yeah, I'm literally learning money. I'm learning how to trade in the largest financial market, but not only one way, like just, you know, forex. I'm doing binary, I'm doing crypto, I'm doing indices. Come on, let's get it together. This is the largest financial industry. And then on top of that, I'm always talking about this information to always being paid to be me. You know, I have the streams to get paid to travel. So my house of abroad is being brought up as well. So you can see how money just comes into that. On top of that, I work in the fashion industry. How do I do that? I'm under the books of Sandra Reynolds. So they're an agency. So already they're established. I'm in their books. So all they need to do is get, like, I don't know, let me just throw my wild shot out here. Yeah, like, Banner Boy just said, you know what, this is the agency I want to use for my campaign, and I want to see all the, let me just throw it out there, like black girls with locks, and then, you know, it happens to be me, yo. Then I have a campaign with Banner Boy that runs 6 months. Do you know how much man will get paid? A woman will get paid plus clearing it. And then on top of that, I see things like, obviously, dealing with small animals. I've been saying to my partner, I want a dog, I want a cat, I want a dog. I really want. Plus, I'm really pushed to move abroad and to do a lot of like charity field work. And even for me, like, even that word, my kind of charity is not going to be just giving money out to people. I'm sorry, no, that's not for me. You need to level up for yourself. You gotta meet me somewhere. And so I kind of want to build that kind of relationship. So within this 20 years, that including everything else that Venus promises with art and pleasure and marriage and gains, because I'm engaged. So why within the 20 years would I not get married? And you know, Venus promises a fine husband. Please, a fine husband. Venus is just come on, guys. So I'm going to have a fine husband. Gains, fame. This is my speculation. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, like, why do you feel so confident about this? Because I've done market analysis for myself. And so I'm recording this to see 20 years in the future if the younger Salome did her work correctly. If I did my maths right. I'm okay to be wrong. It's fine for me to be wrong, because I've been right before. And so it doesn't take anything away from what I do know. And so for me, Venus is, you know, placed very well, like I said, and moving forward, it promises great deeds in my chart. I mean, there's that one opposition it does with Jupiter, but Jupiter is in Venus's house, so even that is like protected. So it's like, I'm very grateful that I was born when I was born, how I was born, and etc. Because I've gone through Saturn, I've gone through the more challenging planets, and so now I'm coming more into planets that actually work well for me, because Venus could be challenging for you in your chart. And so yes, Venus promises marriage, etc., but for you, maybe you're born in the day and then Venus sits in Aries, and then Venus is squaring Mars, and it's like, oh shit, like, is it really going to be marriage? No, it's not going to be that sweetness. So with that, days, I think awareness brings a proper remedy in itself. Awareness is the remedy in itself. Because I really highly believe in the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So if you know that you are, for example, in a 7-year cycle of Mars, and you're trying to be married, and then I see Mars in your birth chart, or you know Mars in your birth chart doesn't rule anything to do with relationships, then and right there in your life, you're like, oh, come on, just use your energy wisely. Obviously, if you're in a Mars Dasha, and Mars rules money, for example, like, why wouldn't you just focus your energy on building value, building wealth, and then when the 7 years finishes, you come into maybe a Venus Dasha, and then boom, time for wedding times and unions and etc. So, like I said, guys, thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate you guys who got to the end with me. If you want to know what's going on with your dashes, like I said, you can go online. This information is available for you. Just write on Google Dash Calculator, write in your details. Like, you will always need is your time of birth, day of birth, and etc. For those people who are like, oh, my day, Salome, can I just pay you and then you do it for me? Yes, you can book the life direction reading, and I do more than dashes in there. So it's not just one system, but you will have that whole Dasha energy from it in there. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching, and peace.